You're going to get a dose of Russillo here. No NFL guests, so I want to run through all the wildcard weekend stuff that we can. A disappointment off between two teams. Why Kansas City potentially could remind us of the Colts. And what does Rudy Gobert have to do with the Rams-Lions? You're like, wait, what? Yeah, we did it. All right, let's start, though, at least with Green Bay, because this has been two different teams on offense this season. And much like Dallas has been two different teams home and away, except for this one. They get smoked at home. We'll get to the Dallas part of this in a second. But when I look at Green Bay's offense, once Jordan Love had making this massive leap, in the beginning of the year, you're like, I wonder if this is really going to be a guy, which we do. We spend a lot of time on. I enjoy talking about it. And now it looks like you have a guy for like 7 or 8 years in Green Bay for a city that I'm very happy for. If you look at that midpoint of the season, and you go with expected points added, a number we all love, the EPA numbers, right? Number one on offense, midway point of the season on San Francisco 49ers. Number two in the NFL, your Green Bay Packers. Let's look at some other stuff that's happened with this roster. The Green Bay offensive line, number two in pass block win rate on the entire season. Aaron Jones, who at times you were like, what's going on with him? Where is he? Well, he's shown up big time. Last 4 games, 476 yards, 3 touchdowns in this blowout at Dallas. Whether it's Reed or Watson, who I both like, they didn't even need him because Dobbs went off for 151 in this game. Musgrave has been terrific as a rookie, and he had, 3 catches, got himself a touchdown as well. So it feels like at least the roster part of this on the offensive side of the ball, we'll worry about the defensive stats later, because they're not great. But it leads me to this longer version of a data point or whatever you want to frame it on, like the Aaron Rodgers argument. Because this win yesterday with this group on offense and who they have been in the second half of this regular season, this is a win against the Aaron Rodgers argument that was always weak when he wanted out of Green Bay. I had an open mind about it. Like he had started it, 2 years out, where he didn't like anything. And you may just start to think, like, is this guy perhaps lean towards, hey, I could be happy or I could be miserable here. You know what? I'm going to go with miserable. But I never understood. I felt like his argument was weak about why he wanted out. They had won 39 games over 3 straight years. Yes, they had the playoff disappointments. Then they went to 8-9. But there was never a strong enough public argument about how bad the front office actually was, in his opinion, for him to be that upset about it, all right? And look, he gets his way. That's all history now. But I felt like this game and what this team has turned into, again, I know on offense, because none of you Packers fans have been super happy with their defensive coordinator this season, this is a win. This proves, hey, you know what? The Packers kind of knew what they were doing. And a bet to have some insurance against Rodgers probably wasn't the wrong bet. And the funny thing is that Love being drafted motivated Rodgers, where he had this like new spike later in his career. So you could argue, even though I don't love using a pick, when you already have somebody that's already there, you're like, well, wait, if we're drafting Love and getting a better version of Rodgers for it, then it's a win-win anyway as they continue to develop Love. So that part of it, it just felt good because the Packers are dealing with a lot of drama of like, hey, I still want to love the guy behind center because he's given me so much joy. Rodgers is one of the greatest to ever do it, but this really sucks because he's making the entire experience miserable. And this is crazy because the turning of a page like this at that position on that side of the football, post a guy like Rodgers, it's not supposed to happen like this. And yes, I know it obviously happened with Favre to Rodgers, but again, that's like getting lucky twice in a department where other franchises are going, we're still in this malaise 10 years post the guy that could get it done. So that's the Green Bay part of it. Dallas, 3 straight years at 12-5 after the previous 4 years averaging just over 8 wins per season. In 21, they were the 3 seed. They were first in points on offense throughout the regular season, 7th in points allowed for their defense. In 22, they were a 5 seed. They were 4th in points, 5th allowed on defense. This year, they were first in points, again, 5th on defense. The only playoff win during the stretch is at Tampa last year. So what's wrong if it's also kind of working? We could make it as simple as Dak. I mean, he's just going to get lit up the whole time. His cap number's massive. You could see a scenario where they rework his contract and he actually, it looks like he gets a raise And then some guys will be like, man, this guy got a raise after he can't do anything in the playoffs. If you look at the stats, and these don't always tell the truth, his QB rating, not QBR, which is more flawed than QBR, goes from 192 from regular season to the playoffs. The interception spike is up, but it's not insane. It's 1.9 in the regular season to 2.5 in the playoffs. He did have 400 yards in that game against Green Bay, which is going to turn into, I would say, a year from now, a James Harden box score where you see a guy on Countdown going, well, I don't know. Dude still got 28 a game in the playoffs. You're like, okay, because that solves everything. So if it's as simple as Dak, okay, but guess what? You're probably not going to, like so many other franchises that are scared to death, be that aggressive and decide to make an overall change when you look at the fact that they've been the number one scoring offense, 2 of the last 3 years. So the constant everybody always points to Jerry Jones. And when everything is that simple and that agreed upon, like the first thing I think of is that really what's happening here? I know that he's the constant, right? Michael Strahan during the Fox breakdown of this game had something really interesting to say, but I didn't know if it was playing the results a little bit. He said, when you're in Dallas, you're on a stage. You can't just play football. There's just another layer of stuff that you're dealing with when you're with Dallas. Now, I think some players would look at that and go, okay, that's a negative. I don't want that much attention. But I think there's also a lot of players out there like that would love the idea how special it is when you're playing for the Dallas Cowboys. Strahan also pointed out, hey, when you enter the field there, you walk through the crowd. I've been there a couple times, and when they first opened the stadium, I remember that being something they were showing off. Like, this is where the locker room exit go through the middle of this suite on the floor area, and then the guys go out into the field. I actually thought it was cool. But then it's like now they lose in the playoffs all the time, so that means that that's part of it, or are you just pointing to a thing and pretending that it's actually that big of a negative? So I don't know if McCarthy's going to lose his job, and the Belichick stuff has made zero sense to me whatsoever, because if you know Belichick, the idea that he would want to work for Jerry Jones if he has other options doesn't seem like Bill's ideal situation. And if you look at Jerry Jones, post-Parcells, the coaches that he's had in there are people that are never going to be a bigger star than he's going to be. Local people in Dallas that knew the story better than we did nationally would consistently say Jason Garrett still has the head coaching gig because Jerry Jones is kind of in control of the whole thing. And they're in control of the roster on top of everything else. Unless they're desperate and Jones wants to do a total 180, that doesn't really align with how he runs his organization. So as bad as Dallas being down 27-0 was, and the bad Dak throws, there was going to be a lot of bad Dak throws. He threw it 60 times, and the game just got away from him really quickly. I thought Philadelphia's 3+ hours was worse. I understand what the score is, but when you're going from 10-1 to a wild card loss at Tampa, who's not a 500 team this season if they're playing in a tougher division, happy for Baker. Not sure if he's the long-term answer. But clearly Tampa a better post-Brady plan than Belichick. So even if we're talking about 27-0 at home versus 16-9 on the road, I have different metrics. In my eyes, I watched that. I cannot tell you how many times I watched Philadelphia on certain plays and was just disgusted. Like, what happened to you guys? This team felt like it missed every tackle that they needed. Every time somebody, whether it was White or receiver out to the side, and you go, oh, they got him. Here's like a stop. They're going to force a punt. They can get back into this game. It's like, nope. He broke a tackle, and now all of a sudden it's another first down, and they're moving the chains. They put up the missed tackle graphic B-roll at 7:57 left in the second quarter. That's really early. Every time they needed to stop, it didn't happen. On the other side of it, Hurts was blitzed. Let me pick it up here. On the other side of it, Hurts was blitzed 18 of his first 25 dropbacks. Any adjustments? Nope. 10 unblocked pressures by Tampa's defense. That means there were 10 pressures where they had a free rusher. That's the highest number of any defense in a game this season in the NFL. Hurts had under 2.5 seconds 13 times in that game last night, tying a career high. I realize there's no A.J. Brown. They lose Julio Jones on that hit where it looked like he was dazed as he was still trying to recover upright with the football, almost fumbled. But there never felt like there was any kind of adjustment other than to have Hurts just throw it out to the sides. Think of the game last night. Hurts dropped back, maybe one look down the field, throw it out to the sides, and terrific tackling. Normally, you cannot live that way, deciding to play so specifically, like without any variance whatsoever. What do we always hear about quarterbacks? Hey, you got to mix it up, got to keep them guessing. Basically, Philadelphia knew the whole time. It looks like they don't respect our run game. At one stretch, I think it was 17 of 18 plays were drop backs. So Philadelphia got real pass happy early. I guess they didn't feel like they could run it against Tampa Bay, but there was no balance. There was no plan. There was no adjustment. I know there's so much more about football that's going on that I don't understand, but when you're watching it happen and you're going, so this is just what it's going to be for 3 hours? Hurts is going to have no chance, who I still think we're going to find out is more hurt than we realized during the offseason. But it was gross. The tackling, the offense. There was a punt where the Eagles had punted it, and the guys didn't even let it bounce for a potential Philadelphia roll. I'm like, wait, why did you down it there? The safety from Hurts, you're like, this guy isn't really going to take a safety in a playoff game, is he? I know some are dumping on Sirianni on taking the 3 points off when they got the penalty and decided going for it on 4th and 5. But at that point, it was 25-9. I think you're just piling on at that point. And to have the tush-push stop was kind of the most fitting thing for Philadelphia struggling and then being out. A team that was in the Super Bowl last year, a team that we were like, I guess Hurts is the best quarterback in the NFC. It is easily the most talented roster when you look at the O-line and the D-line. And yeah, maybe the secondary and linebackers are lacking a little bit, but look at the playmakers of all this stuff. This was a colossal fall off from where they were at 10-1 of the regular season and where they're at in the Super Bowl last year. And honestly, that looked like a team that had no interest in being out there for 3 hours last night. Detroit and LA. This is a fun one because I was not rooting against anyone. I was kind of rooting for it all to happen at the same time. That doesn't happen a lot. It was going to feel great if Stafford got this one. The guy battles. Different path. I think he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats of his era. He was not allowed to do that because he lost so much in Detroit. But I think just the skill, his ability to actually just play the position and the turnaround the Rams had this season. But I know the rules are that he has to be considered a loser because they lost all the time in Detroit. The Goff angle is incredible. This is somebody that's admitted when he was traded after at least getting to a Super Bowl that it hurt him and that he had to reset. I remember having Dilfer on during this. I was like, what do you think? And he said specifically that McVay wanted a partner at the quarterback position, not necessarily somebody he had to hold his hands. And that's something that Dilfer has brought up. So I was not a huge Goff guy when he was in Los Angeles. The trade made all the sense in the world to me. It pays off for the Rams. And I wasn't sure that Goff was even going to be a starter after they kind of gave him a chance in Detroit because they had made the trade and then they'd make some other decision at quarterback. I was wrong about the Goff part in Detroit. He ends the longest active playoff drought in the NFL going back to 1991. And I'd have to ask Lions fans, or really any fans, if I had told you, hey, it's going to be 3+ decades before you get a playoff win again, would you sign up for that? I guess in Detroit, you'd be like, what am I supposed to do? Go outside during those months? But that is, you want to talk about an unbelievable product? Hey, this is going to bum you out for 3 decades. Are you interested? I am interested. Where do I sign up? So there was a bit of recency on the trade there that I had to push back on that I saw a little bit. And that was that Detroit, with this win, proves that they won the Goff-Stafford trade. I don't know that I'm ready to do that. Now, if we do a full accounting of the trade, they got Goff, they get the playoff win and the drought. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. Nice haul. Open to it, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet when the Rams actually won a Super Bowl. Simmons and I argue about the Pelicans-Lakers Anthony Davis trade, I think, once every 3 months. And yeah, on paper and looking back, you're like, that's a lot of stuff that they had to move for him. But it was also for a chance to add a player that was that important because without Anthony Davis, that Lakers team doesn't win a championship. So they won a championship. So if Stafford wins one and Anthony Davis wins one, can you really knock them that much? That's where Rudy Gobert comes in. That means now that if the Minnesota Timberwolves win an NBA title, the Rudy Gobert trade was worth it, and the Timberwolves did win the trade. I'm not willing to go that far. If you're telling me that sounds inconsistent, I'm telling you it's my math, and you're just going to have to deal with it. So the Lions are off the hook now, and that means your Miami Dolphins have the longest playoff drought active NFL teams. Look, no one expected the Dolphins to go into Kansas City and actually win that game. I thought it maybe could get a little weird with a weather deal here or there. Not the case. Other than the deep shot to Tyreek Hill, they showed nothing on offense, which isn't so much about the weather as a constant theme of who Miami seems to be against superior opponents. But some life from Kansas City on offense to team up with the best Mahomes-era defense the Chiefs have ever had. And it got me thinking about with their offensive, I don't know if we call it a surge in that weather. And I know there's a lot of helmet experts out there right now. Maybe the helmet cracked because it was negative 30. It could be that. Maybe the helmet company doesn't have to worry about what the helmet's going to do because that's not usually how cold it is when they're playing outside. So back to this whole Colts-Kansas City deal. The reason I bring that up is this Kansas City offense just felt lost for just too much of the season. It felt like it got a little bit worse. And I'm wondering if we're seeing some signs of life here because everybody's going to want to pick Mahomes again, which I don't really blame you. Like, I kind of still want to pick Mahomes. I just never want to pick against that guy. We'll see what happens with this weekend's game in Buffalo. But if you go back to the Colts season in 2006, the Colts rush offense was the worst in the NFL. They were allowing like 5+, 5.1, 5.2 yards per carry against the run. And so even though it was Manning and it was the Colts and they were going to make the playoffs, you were kind of like, yeah, but look at history. Like, no team has ever won a Super Bowl that's been that bad against the run. And guess what? They get Bob Sanders back. And I think it was a little bit more than just Bob Sanders. And all of a sudden, they're just shutting everybody down. I'll never forget Herm Edwards on the sideline of that playoff game against the Colts in 2007 when he was the head coach of the Chiefs. They come out, they're going to run it. And then like 2 series, they can't move the football on the ground. And Herm's just like looking around. I could just hear him, being like, I thought these fellas couldn't stop the run. And you're just like, yeah, I guess they can now. And that was it. Chiefs, it just felt like we spent all week thinking we're going to run it right at these guys, and now they're going to tackle everybody. It's not the same thing because it wasn't that dramatic, but when you think of the Mahomes standard on offense, and that's the only thing that was holding a lot of us back from thinking like, man, I still think they're just going to beat everybody because of him, to see it look a little bit better in those elements, I got to admit, I'm flirting with it. I'm flirting with just picking them against everybody again, including Baltimore, even though that doesn't make a ton of sense. So now you've got the Tua question. I don't really know what we're going to argue about anymore with him. I mean, unless there's this next level that's going to be unlocked going into his 3rd season with McDaniel, it feels like maybe the best coaching job we've seen with a quarterback in recent memory. It's very clear when I watch him. The first read stuff is awesome. When it's all in sync, it is incredible. This is the best sports car ever. But like when one thing is off, okay, you're like, hey, the car won't start. Why? Oh, because the dome light is busted. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. That's what this offense feels like with Tua. Because as soon as to the second read, you're like, we ran through some of the numbers when everything's kind of easy and cruising in the first 3 quarters, especially against lesser opponents. He's terrific. And then when it's late and when he's down, he's just not. I don't know anybody's going to argue this anymore. The argument you're having internally, if you're Miami, is you're looking at his 5th-year option at $23.4 million and saying maybe we could just do that, then franchise him after. And if he's great and he's even more expensive a year from now, then that's actually still kind of a win for us. The downside to that is there's just a lot of people that run football teams going, you can't have the face of your franchise be playing on the 5th-year option and not wanting to give him the extension because then you're kind of telling everybody we don't really believe in him. It's a lot like the Dak thing, even though Dak is better than Tua, where you want to move on from Dak? Okay, for who? What's the plan? And you can't get that aggressive when you kind of have somebody that can do the job unless you think he's incapable. And it feels like Tua against, look, there might be a fluky win there in the playoff, but we'll see. We'll see what the contract is. We'll see what the numbers are. I don't know that he would take less. And I got to be honest with you, too. Like, I'm not trying to sound like a 100-year-old guy here. But him asking for Mahomes' jersey after the game, that's so fucking embarrassing. And I like Tua. But, like, get an email out. That's what assistants are for. I mean, if that's really what happened, and that's what it looked like, that's what happened. So I don't know if that's going to be addressed or followed up here But I went and watched it like a third time, and it sounds like Mahomes is like, yeah, I'm going to keep this one. I'll get you another one after. Like, dude, have a different priority right after getting bounced in the playoffs. I might want a CJ Stroud jersey. If I were Joe Flacco, I wouldn't ask for it right after he put up 45 points on us. So CJ is now the youngest quarterback to win a playoff game. He put up 45 points here on the number one yardage defense in the NFL. It was fitting that it was against Flacco because I remember my Flacco isn't that great arguments from 15 years ago. Now, why did I say that? Because normally you go, hey, a rookie won a playoff game. All right, well, what did everybody else do? The other team turned it over 3 times. Like, how good is their defense? That was not the case here at all. This was about Stroud putting on a show for 3 hours. So when I look back at Flacco, 2007 rookie season, 08 playoffs, in 3 playoff games, because they made it through 3, Flacco completed 9, 11, and 13 passes. And then there was like he almost got more credit for being a winner than Stafford did, even though Stafford was 10 times the quarterback, right? Because when the quarterback wins, despite not really doing all that much, you're like, he does just enough, though. He fits their character. The next year when they smoked New England at New England, 33-14, he was 4 of 10 for 34 yards. Now that game got out of hand so quickly, you could say, well, you didn't have to throw a ton of passes. My point was the Ravens kept winning playoff games, and it didn't really feel like he did all that much. Then I guess in year 5, something happened where he's really good for a few weeks. So that's part of the history with young quarterbacks, specifically to Flacco's rookie year, where you're like, man, he's getting all this credit. And I'm on the air going, I don't really think he's doing all that much, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of the defense and every other thing that we're doing. Again, the game was a little bit different there, where this was all Stroud. He had a series of throws where it felt like he could do everything. Off-balance throw where his base is terrible, across his body to the left, check. He had a bootleg to his right in traffic where he had a free rusher coming at him, and he had to get the throw underneath him on the run, and he hit his receiver right on the hands, check. The right to left B-button floater where he knew he had to get the ball up, but he couldn't throw a dart because the receiver had to clear himself, but he liked his angle and that he thought he would get it there. Throws that perfectly. The deep shot that he missed, the flick of the wrist. And I remember the lead 11 guys when Stroud was in it. I was like, who do you like? And they're like, dude, have you seen Stroud just throw? Have you seen him physically throw? The ball, it's like a rocket launcher out of his hands. The miss was one of the most impressive throws I saw all weekend from anybody. So then it led to, is this the best rookie performance that we've ever seen? Maybe in the playoffs, but I couldn't help but think about Andrew Luck a little bit. Let's go through it. Andrew Luck, 2012, CJ 2023. Luck, 16 games, 4,300 plus yards, 23 touchdowns, 18 picks. Yikes. 54% completion rate. He did throw it 627 times, and that's in 2012. You were like, dude, what is up with this guy? He was almost going to miss a start, like Pedro style. Be like, yeah, he just threw too many pitches last week. His quarterback rating was 76, but his QBR was 65, which factors in a lot more of the game circumstances. He was sacked 41 times. His interception ratio was 2.9%. CJ, 15 games, less yards, but, another game there he probably would have caught Luck, 4,100, 23 touchdowns, same number. 5 interceptions, 13 less. Completion percentage, 10 points higher. Completion is just higher across the board now. Yards per attempt is higher despite, the less overall yards because he threw it 499 to Luck 627. Quarterback rating, he smokes him in that one, 101. QBR, though, lower than Luck's at 57, and he was sacked 38 times. His interception percentage was 1%, which led the NFL this year as a rookie. That seems impossible. Then I started thinking about the teams because I'm like, I remember thinking, I can't believe Luck got this Colts team into the playoffs. They were 31st in opponents' yards per play. They couldn't run the football. Houston was a middling defense, much better than the Colts were, though, but they were even worse at rushing the football. You look at the personnel, Reggie Wayne towards the end, but T.Y. Hilton probably better than Nico Collins and Tank Dell at this point. And then they got into the playoffs, and C.J. Stroud did what he did, and then Luck had to throw it, I think, 60 times in his first playoff game with a couple picks. I'll admit, as I was watching it all play out, I was like, is Stroud actually better than Luck? Is Stroud putting this team more on his back than Luck did? Because I think Luck put it on his back so much more than any rookie has had to, and then gotten into the playoffs. That's how special I thought he was, because I felt like all the other elements of the game, O-line, special teams, defense, rushing, it was like, man, they don't have anything else. But the interception numbers for a rookie to do what Stroud just did, that doesn't happen. That's not supposed to happen. And it looks like the AFC has another special one. Last game, Bills won. Go Bills.